What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today, I'm going to be talking about the fifth Hunger Games movie, the prequel to all the other Hunger Games movies, The Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes takes place 64 years before the events of the Hunger Games, and 64 years before he becomes the tyrannical president of Panem, and focuses on Snow as he sees a chance for a change in fortunes when he mentors Lucy Greybeard, the female tribute from District 12. I never read the Hunger Games books. I never read Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes either, so I'm not as attached to the Hunger Games as so many other people may be. I did see them when they first came out. I think the first one's a solid movie. I really like it. I don't love it like many people do. Catching Fire, though, is a really great movie. I think that that's a phenomenal YA adaptation. And then they split Mockingjay into two parts for some reason. I don't know why, because The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes is the one that should have been split into two parts, and Mockingjay should have just been one movie. Don't get me wrong, I did like a majority of this movie. Didn't love it, but I liked it. The first two-thirds were really what kept me engaged with this movie. I loved seeing everything behind the scenes in the Capitol, how, like, the peacekeepers used to look, just everything from a visual standpoint was really interesting because it's almost like you're so far into the future in the Hunger Games movies with Katniss that you kind of wonder what the world was like even after the war, even after Panem was split into 12 districts and you have the capital. Like, what happened? Like, what did the early days of this thing look like? So this takes place during the 10th Hunger Games, and we know that Katniss partook in the 74th Hunger Games and the Quarter Quell, which were the 75th Hunger Games. I just liked the visual aspect where it felt more analog than those movies that felt more digital and futuristic. Like, the peacekeepers in this movie look way different than the peacekeepers in the previous four movies, as I would assume they should look. And the weaponry's a lot different, the technology's a lot different, as I feel like it should be. And I feel like the movie captured the old school feel, the analog style of what I feel like whenever these events take place would have been like. If anything, the Katniss story does a great job at presenting a future where this does a great job at presenting a past. Tom Blythe, I thought, was also really good as Snow. We'll talk about some of the events in a non-spoiler way that correlate to his rise to power later on in the review, but for the most part, despite what I'm going to say about that, I can actually see this man turning into this guy when all is said and done. I'm like, yep, I can see that. I definitely buy the fact that you're going to look like Donald Sutherland in 64 years. So, Viola Davis, man, she knew the assignment. She showed up. She did her homework. She just eats the scenery in this movie in, like, a good way. Because I'm about to say that her performance is so hammy and cartoony, and usually in a movie like this, I would say that's a bad thing, because for a Hunger Games villain to be like that, I feel like movies that just feel so drab and hopeless, so dreary, having a more cartoony villain was a welcome change of pace, and I thought it actually worked. She had some great line delivery here, and it's Viola Davis. Of course, she's gonna make it work. She's Viola Davis, for Christ's sake. Yeah, you're supposed to be taking her seriously, but then there's times where you just have to sit back for a minute and laugh. And not just her, but other people in the Capitol, because it's like, you know what? You're all vile and pathetic. It's just fun to, like, laugh at their own cartooniness because of how pathetic they are, because their viewpoints are just so out of touch with how you think as an audience member. You're just like, no, 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 no. Why? Why would you think that? But you just laugh at it because these characters are so consumed in their own villainy and their own schemes and their own power struggles that they're just set in their ways now, and they have their own viewpoints and their own mindsets as to what's supposed to be going on in the Capitol and in the districts of Panem. You just kind of have this god complex, you know? You're a little pathetic weasel, but that's what makes you so interesting. Her character, Gaul, is the most interesting character in this entire movie. So is Peter Dinklage's character. And Peter Dinklage has this hidden nature to him in this movie. He's so good. It's Peter Dinklage. There's nothing else to be said. But he has this hidden nature where it's like, oh, man, another character who's consumed by their own greed. Come on, man. But then he has a monologue at the end. You can hear the guilt in his voice. Well, shit. I had this idea. It shouldn't have been taken as seriously as it was, and here we are. Kids are killing kids now. That's where Hunger Games is at its best. When it has themes like that, when it has characters struggle with their inner guilt and the consequences of what they've actually caused, that's where I'm the most interested in the Hunger Games. It's not the games themselves, even though the games themselves are actually really cool. And the games themselves in this movie take up a good majority of the last third of the first act and much of the second act. It was actually really fun, really riveting. I thought that it was pretty unique considering that, as I said, I felt like that this movie existed in an analog age in the districts of Panem, so it felt older, but I felt that that was used to the advantage because the technology was older, the weapons were older, so it's like they had to get a little bit more creative with the action scenes, and it was making for some fun. And they were extended action scenes too. There wasn't just, here comes an action scene, Katniss shoots a bow, that plane's going down. Okay, that's it. It was really fun in those parts. And the chemistry between Tom Blythe and Rachel Zegler, I thought was actually pretty good. Rachel Zegler in the movie, I don't think is that good. Her character's not that good either, but the fact that it's Tom Blythe, and I buy the fact that he's going to become the President Snow that we know him to become, and they actually do have good chemistry, is what sold me on the Snow and Lucy Greybeard storyline. Because, like I said, I don't think Rachel Zegler does a good job in this movie. What is her character? What is the whole point of Lucy Greybeard? She sings!
Whoop-de-doo! What does it all mean, Basil?
That's it. I can sing. Does that make me a cool person? No. For anybody walking out of this movie saying, oh, Lucy Greybeard's a more compelling character than Katniss Everdeen ever was, I will literally stop you in the hall and be like, explain yourself, muggle. Wrong franchise, but you catch my drift. I wasn't invested in the character of Lucy Greybeard all that much. And I think it's because I just wasn't invested in Rachel Zegler's performance. Yeah, sure, she can sing. The character is a singer. Sure, I get it. But in everything she's been in, West Side Story, Shazam! Fury of the Gods, this movie, she hasn't impressed me all that much, honestly. West Side Story being the standout performance for her in terms of these three movies, but still, there's nothing like special about her, I don't feel like. I feel like she's one of those people that were just building up, you know? She has such a big presence on social media, that it's almost like, oh yeah, Rachel Zegler, she's great. Yeah, she's a great person, but is she a good actress? I don't think so. I don't think that the southern accent that they give her in this movie helps her all that much. As I said in the beginning, I did enjoy the first 2/3 of this movie, despite not really latching on to Lucy Greybeard as a character or Rachel Zegler's performance as Lucy Greybeard. I think the movie really, honestly, almost crashes and burns in the last third. It's split up into 3 chapters. The third chapter, or third part, I guess, because they're called parts, almost brings this movie to a screeching halt. Any momentum that this movie had from the first 2/3 is completely gone. I left the theater feeling frustrated and that most of what I was seeing was rushed. This is why I feel like this movie should have been split into 2, because what it really becomes is the descent of Snow into his madness. I feel like the last 45 minutes of this movie just breezed over a lot of that. I don't know how it is in the book. I've stated I haven't read the book, so correct me if I'm wrong in saying this, but there's so many things that the movie is trying to shove into that third act that feels so rushed. It doesn't give you time to marinate the fact that he is descending into madness. I understand why he would, but I don't think that there's enough to show us that he becomes the vile, evil, tyrannical leader of Panem that we know him to be. I can see the progression getting there eventually. I just needed more time, and I'm not talking 20 minutes, I'm not talking 10 minutes, I'm talking another whole ass movie. If you cut this movie off at the end of the Hunger Games and left it on a cliffhanger, if you cut this ended at 2 hours and it was like, "Oh, hey, there's another part of this story coming out next year." It's another hour and a half to 2 hours of President Snow's descent into madness with him as a peacekeeper and how that affects him. Fine. That's what they should have done. This is the one that should have been 2 movies, not Mockingjay. Mockingjay could easily have been 1 2-hour and 45-minute movie. But, back then, A, they needed cash. B, they were afraid to make anything over 3 hours, which is, of course, commonplace nowadays. I would really be interested to see if these movies were made today, in the 2020s, if Mockingjay would actually be split into 2 parts. Probably not, but, money. So, if you're gonna go for the money, make this one the 2-parter. Don't make Mockingjay the 2-parter, because I just didn't have enough time to resonate with all the information that was thrown at me, that was trying to get me to believe that Snow was becoming mad. You could see him going mad, but every moment just feels rushed, breezed over, and doesn't give the character enough time to even sit with his decisions. There's so many decisions he makes in the last 45 minutes of the movie where I'm just like, what the hell, man? That just really crossed your mind. I definitely needed more time, and by more time, I mean another movie, to let it sink in. Honestly, it almost hindered my entire enjoyment of this movie, because those first 2/3, despite having some problems with it, I was really enjoying. I was like, this is the best Hunger Games movie since the first one, and I still stand by that. I do think that this is better than both Mockingjay movies, but there was a point where I was like, this might even match the first Hunger Games movie, and I don't feel that anymore, because that last 45 minutes of this movie just completely loses steam and crashes to a halt. It almost derails the entire thing. And I also just felt like, I don't know, I loved seeing more of the Capitol in this movie, but I think a big part of me, and I'm not, this is what's gonna happen with prequels, especially when you're focusing on one area more than another, because when you're focusing more on the Capitol and the behind the scenes stuff, that stuff was interesting. The Academy stuff, I was like, that's cool. The Peacekeeper stuff was still cool, but I just felt like there wasn't enough of making Panem this grand, sweeping nation that we know it to be. And that's probably by design. I understand this is a prequel, so I can't complain about it too much, but I just miss when Katniss and Peeta were on the train and they're going through all the different districts of Panem, and we got to see all the different districts. Okay, we got to see different parts of District 12, like the Hanging Tree. Pretty creepy imagery too, but it felt smaller in scale for me than the previous Hunger Games movies. Even the Hunger Games itself in this movie felt smaller in scale, and I just missed the big, wide scope of how those movies presented the Hunger Games and the districts of Panem and the capital in those movies. So the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, I enjoyed it for the most part. Almost gets derailed in the last 45 minutes. I just think you needed an extra movie. You needed a lot more time. I was just frustrated with it because it felt so rushed and everything felt so breezed over. It wasn't enough time to let everything sink in at the end. Whereas I was having a grand old ball in the first 2/3, and I could see where the story was leading to. And the fact that it felt so rushed was very disappointing in the end. With that, I will say I enjoyed The Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, annoyingly long title, I know, with at least 3/4 worth of a bucket of popcorn. Not as good as the first one or Catching Fire, but I did enjoy it more than both Mockingjay movies. So where does this rank for you in the Hunger Games movies, and have you seen The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes? Let me know what you think about it in the comment section below, as well as your ranking. I'll leave my link to my website in the description below as well. You guys are the best. Thank you for watching. My name is Alex Madden, and I'll see you at the movies somewhere.